Today, we're going to be talking about 3 things that we feel that we have done that has helped our kingdom marriage to be very, very successful. So, we want to go ahead and share that with you. So, whether you are on your way to a kingdom marriage or you are already in one, this is going to be extremely helpful for you. So, what is number one, love?
The first one that kind of out of order, but the one that I liked the best was don't go digging through the dirt unless you're willing to face the turd. It means that if it's something that you've got things in your past, we've all had past, we've all had things where we come from that we're not proud of, we've all had things we've had to work through. No one's perfect. And I think sometimes where people get caught up is that they become so focused on the things that are, that would be considered like these are my red flags, these are all these things that I have to deal with. Everyone's got these skeletons, everyone's got all these things. And I think that a lot of dating culture kind of teaches you to kind of want to hone in on those things kind of right out the gate and kind of really focus on them. But I think what happens sometimes is that you have to let some of those kind of come up organically. If you start kind of forcing your way and making it to where it's like, I need to find out all of these areas, all of these questions, all of these past, all of these hurts, there's a lot of hurt and a lot of trauma that's really kind of buried in a lot of those circumstances. Some of them, they're not very pretty. They're not very enjoyable. They don't have a lot of beneficial content to them. It's not really anything that really fixes anything currently. And there very well may have been a lot of healing that has taken place or still need to take place in some of those areas that just aren't quite ready yet. Sometimes you have to let trust build first. And if it's something that you're starting to find out, I need to know all the answers, all the details, all the situations, all the anything that kind of surrounds those moments, sometimes you end up finding out that the questions that you had thought you wanted to know, you weren't prepared for the answers that came with them. Some of the other things, they just don't matter. And if it's something that has nothing to do with where you're at today or where you're going in the future, then sometimes letting the past go is really kind of one of the strongest ways to kind of make that an easier transition for everybody.
I think that it's very important to leave the past where the past is
Yeah.
in all of it. Even like as you're saying that, it's becoming more apparent like
Yeah.
how important it is just to leave the past behind because exactly, if it doesn't affect your future, it doesn't matter. And even if it affects your future, it doesn't have to be forced to the surface because it will come in its own time.
Right.
And like he said, building that trust. We decided very early on that we don't have to tell each other everything.
No.
And that has been amazing. I can't tell you when he's like, you know what? You don't have to tell me everything. It's okay. I felt so much relief because we are taught that if you're married, you have to tell each other everything all the time. And
Yeah.
like they've got to know everything in your past. And it's like, if it's not beneficial, if it doesn't bring you joy when you speak about it, if it's something that you dealt with and you want to leave it lie, because a lot of us, we do have pain, we do have hurt in our past, we have things that are just nothing to write home about, whatever it is. What benefit does it do if you make that person, tell me what that is?
Right. Yeah. Abuse. Abuse.
Abuse.
You saw it.
Abuse.
Abuse.
Adorable. Abuse. That's so cute.
Well,
But yeah, go ahead.
play through it here in like two different ways. It's either out of the blue, you're starting to dig and you're starting to say, you start pulling on that thread like the end of a sweater, and eventually you start unraveling this entire mess of worms that had nothing to do with anything related to what was currently happening, but now you've got a mess to deal with. The other end up being in that situation is saying, okay, if we both know there's things that neither one of us have answers to, neither one of us have had questions about it. But what do you do whenever you're tormented by your own thoughts of something that's playing in your mind from a question that you don't know? We kind of made it to a point where we said it's kind of a safe space to say if we have questions about something that's really happening us in the moment, have the freedom to ask it. But if it's one of those things that when you're asking those questions, you're also preparing yourself for the best case scenario, you're preparing yourself for the worst case scenario. Because if you go just starting to dig after all of these areas and all of these really kind of intimate details, really it's not really something like, what'd you buy at the grocery store on Wednesday? It's more like what happened in the past that ended up in this moment, or where's this kind of coming from? And those are kind of areas that you're saying, okay, if I'm going to go and start asking all these questions, I have to be prepared for the answers that come. And that's something that a lot of people get messed up with because they expect the best and they don't prepare for the worst. And it's not to say that everyone has a worst case scenario, but if you aren't prepared to deal with it, you really shouldn't go deal with it. And if it's something that all of these areas kind of come up now where you're saying, okay, in this moment, where is this current situation happening? Where did this come from? Where is this rooted? Where can we help you? Where can we help each other kind of work through this problem? And then it's us saying, okay, something that happened a long time ago, this is currently dealing with it. This is where it's coming from. And now it's something that both of us are in that spot where we're able to deal with it together versus saying, I need to know and I need answers. So I need you to start talking now. That's going to put up defensive walls. It's going to make it to where it's a situation where neither person's going to be there.
That happened. That's why I'm giggling. Because one time that kind of happened.
Yeah.
And I was the aggressor. I will just throw myself out there. And it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And it was a thing where, if you're here, you're probably a Christian, so you understand that, like, we not only just we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. Right. So even if you're dealing with real-time stuff, and this is real-life things, a lot of times there will be something behind it that's trying to drive things forward. Yeah. Certain topics or subjects will be being pushed, and buttons will be being pushed, and it is to try to drive a wedge between you and your spouse. Of course. To cause turmoil, to wreck your day, whatever it is. And so, in those moments, you have to really just like stop and be like, I'm going to love this person and I'm going to respect this person, even if you're hurting. Yeah. And I'm not going to push them into a place that they're not comfortable with. And so that's why we giggle about it. We healed, but things happen, but you live and you learn, and you move forward. So
yeah. And then one of the other things that we found out is that when you're getting together, you don't really learn how to navigate things in good times. You learn how to navigate them in the rough times. Right. But the big point is trying to figure out, how do you fight with each other and your own selves and all these things in a way that constructively brings peace instead of bringing confusion.
Because you're going to fight.
You're going to.
It's going to happen. The best relationships, the people that love each other the most, you are going to fight. Yeah. You're going to have disagreements. That's part of a healthy relationship. If you don't ever disagree, something's wrong.
Yeah. If you had someone that's just literally just going off every single one of your own thoughts, they just reaffirm everything that you're thinking about. They never challenge you. They never take you into place that makes you say, what's currently happening really isn't okay. We need to kind of fix this and figure this out. Oh. You're going to end up in some disagreements with each other. You're going to end up with saying, okay, this is how I've learned how to deal with it in my past. This is how you learned how to deal with it in your past. No. But whenever those kind of come together, sometimes they do come together a little bit more aggressively, and you end up with a conflict. And so how do you start working through conflicts? The first one is realizing that no one gets a sticker for silence, meaning that when you have a fight, it's not always best to just go to your corner and stay to your corner. There ends up having to be a point where you don't get a badge for being the first one. You don't get a badge for saying, it's like, I'm the one that held out the longest. You're the first one to come and talk. That means that you accept the guilt for this situation.
I was going to say, whoever talks first loses. Right. But that is really a boost. That's a boost. That's abusive. That's abusive behavior.
Man, it's toxic.
It's toxic.
Man, it'll kill a mood in any atmosphere.
It really will. And it's something that I really had to work through because I grew up in a home where nobody spoke. Yeah. And I know, I'm so talkative. Where did I get it? I don't know. But in conflict, I did not know how to work through that. So that was something that initially I did do to him a lot. It wasn't like weeks or anything like that. I mean, it'd be like, it wasn't to that level. But it wasn't because I was trying to punish him. And maybe a little bit, who knows. But not in my mind. That wasn't my thought behind it. It was just I didn't know how to enter into that conflict and it have any kind of resolve. Right. Because I just didn't know how to do it yet. And so that's something that we worked on together. But now I do understand that when I get really upset, the quicker I can come and talk to him, the better, because I avoid that very toxic behavior that I think can happens to people just because they're upset. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're just upset, you just don't want to talk to that person, but you have to break that cycle off because it's cruel.
Yeah.
Because you're married to them, you're gonna have to talk to them.
Yeah.
And so the longer you hold out and begin and stew on that grudge, I mean, the more you're hurting yourself and that person and everybody that's in your household. The quicker you can humble yourself and go and talk to them, even if you're right.
Yeah.
Even if you're right. And you just go and be like, hey, let's talk about it. You know, you have to grow in that. But the thing where he was going with that is
It's not also one of those points where you come in that moment and you sit down and you're like, I'm ready for you to tell me how wrong you were in that moment also. That's also something that will put up more defensive walls, won't it? I'm ready for you to apologize to me now because I need to go do stuff this afternoon. That's a fun one. But the part of it is that it's always the goal to say, if that's something that you deal with and that's something that you've been kind of reaffirmed in your past of saying, okay, I'm going to give them their space, I'm going to give them their corners, I'm going to give them some time to kind of heal and reflect and get to a point where we can kind of constructively talk about this.
where they're not yelling anymore.
There is a window. Come in guns a-blazing a little early in that part and things are still a little fresh and raw. You got some defensive walls, prepare for that. But it's also an accomplishment of saying, how quickly can we get over this so we can get back to what we were doing better and faster? Because if you want to say, this happened at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I've got some, we're wanting to spend an entire Saturday, we're wanting to do a Sunday together, you have something happen early in the morning, you don't want to say, well, we fixed it before we went to bed at 10:30 that evening or 9 o'clock in the evening. The goal should say, how soon can we get to a point where we can come to an agreement, realize that this is something that's not because of us, it's not because of anything that we had, anything that was going on, but there's some issues that we need to deal with. How fast can we get to that resolution?
So, real quick, just realized another thing. Another thing that we do that goes in this whole thing that has helped us tremendously is that you both say you're sorry, even if you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
We both say we're sorry. So, like, I'll say, I'm sorry. And then,
Say, I forgive you.
and then I'll say,
She's like,
and then I'll say,
And you're sorry too, right?
Sorry too, right? And he'll say, and I'm sorry too. And the thing is one, that's a very humble thing for you to do.
Yeah.
And it clears the air because it's like, I think it is just natural for us to feel like we need an apology too, even if you weren't, they weren't in the wrong, but maybe whatever happened after that. And so just a really great way to just tackle that head on is just always be prepared to say you're sorry and always have that sorry returned.
It changes your posture.
It really does. Just, I'm sorry too.
Yeah.
And then kiss and make up. And the more you do that, the quicker you will kiss and make up. And then, this is gold right here. And then the other thing is, so when you are in conflict, especially when you're newly married or even newly in your relationship, when you get into a fight, and this is going to be the hardest thing for most people, do not go and call. Okay, do what you want. But we recommend, and what has worked for us is
Don't do what you want. Do what we tell you to.
Absolutely.
Just don't get
it will this will take you miles. So the knee-jerk reaction is when you get into a fight with your spouse, is to call somebody, and especially when it's a really bad one and you're really frustrated and you truly don't know how to get to the bottom of it. They're not making any sense. They're not hearing what you're saying, vice versa. You cannot break through. You don't know what to do with yourself. You guys have separated yourselves all day. You want to go and talk to your best friend. You want to go talk to your mom, you want to go talk to someone. But the thing is the thing we learned, and I feel like the position God put us in, was we never did that. No. Now, was it tempting? Absolutely. There were days I would cry because I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to about what we were going through in that moment. One, because I knew that it wasn't right.
Right.
Because the thing is one, you don't want to bring other people into your marriage. Not in that way. I promise you, you will regret it. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it is your most trusted friend, if it is your mom. It is not good for more than two people to be in a marriage. It's just not.
Right.
Because you're going to allow the other person to form opinions, to speak into your marriage when it's at its weakest.
Yeah.
That is not good. People will tell you it is. Go talk to your girlfriends. It's not true. And plus, you don't learn how to resolve your own conflict.
Yeah.
Because now you just brought in this completely separate voice that probably has a completely different marriage than you, completely different standards they live their life by. Who knows? It doesn't matter. They're not you, and they're not the Lord. So that's not good for that reason. But also, you have to learn to fix your own problems.
Yeah.
And if you go and you're so upset and you go and you talk to someone and that person doesn't, your spouse doesn't, and they're at home and they're stewing and they're upset and they have gotten there's no relief. But you went and you had coffee with your friend and you talked about them all afternoon and you come back home whistling and singing a tune because you're feeling better. Well, that other person's like, why are they not upset anymore? What happened?
Yeah.
I'm just as upset as I was. And it's kind of like an emotional infidelity in a way,
In small ways.
in a very small way.
It's a tension and a release.
Yes.
If you've got tension built up between the two of you and one of you has a release, then it's something that the other person still has to have that tension resolved somehow.
Right.
And if it's something that you don't resolve that point of it, you start relying on some other people to be that source of where you get that comfort from. Yeah. And if you're not relying on your spouse or your significant other to be able to help you in that way, and this isn't a sexual thing, but it is something that there is an emotional tie to it. If you're not relying on that other person, then you can't work through it together. Right. Because if you're just calling people that are going to affirm your own story, tell you are the victim, help you in your ways to help you in the way, because that's the natural response. You call people and you want to help them out. I would say that in that part of it, it's something that's a lot more rare to find someone who will take your spouse's or take your other significant other's side above your own whenever you call them. If it was like, I have friends that I could call, but it's something that I wouldn't. And it's not because they would take my side. It's just because of a part of it that we have to have that point where we're coming together, we're figuring out our own stuff, and we're moving together to basically kind of get to that resolution of it. Because if you're relying on other people, that you never learn how to rely on each other.
Exactly.
And that's a big difference.
The big thing is it's learning, especially in that first year of marriage, really you have to learn to rely on each other for everything.
Yeah.
You have to learn to, that is so pivotal because that's the time you're going to want to run away the most and run to somebody that maybe you've been dealing with problems with for a long time. They've been your friend for a long time and you've been taught, you always dealt with stuff together. It's going to be that just built into you to want to do that. And when you fight that and say, no, I'm going to deal with this with you. We are going to figure this out. You will have some very hard times in it, but it will come out where your marriage is so much stronger because you did that.
And you lose the desire to fix things if you already feel like you fixed it.
Yeah, and you've got somebody fluffing you, telling you fluffing you, fluffing and quaffing you, and telling you how great you are and how much they're horrible. That's not okay.
No.
That's not okay at all. That's actually gross.
And you're actually leaving your other person, the other person in this relationship, you're leaving them to kind of forcibly deal with it themselves.
Sad.
And if they don't have an outlet to be able to do that themselves, which again, is something that learning and maturity is learning how to deal with your own problems together in a way that makes conflict resolution better rather than drive a wedge between you. And that's kind of it really is a big deal that if you don't come home and you're not willing to actually work through those together, if you feel better, if they've made you feel better and didn't give you that desire and you don't have that desire to still try and work through things because you feel like things have gotten better and they'll eventually come to it themselves, you're just leaving them in that situation where they're having to deal with trauma and turmoil and conflict and frustration. It just draws it out longer.
Yeah. So, the third and last thing, which I think now is actually technically the fourth. Anyway, making time for each other.
Yeah.
So big. So one of the things I love about this guy is he's the one who actually showed me what that looks like, because from the time we were together, he did everything he could to be with me all the time when he wasn't at work. Always made plans with me. Since we have been married, and most of the time when we were dating, we have always had lunch together.
Yeah.
So he is always leaves work, comes home, or went to wherever I was and met in town or whatever it is, but we always have lunch together.
Yeah.
And there, I can count on one hand the amount of times that we haven't. And that's just been because of, an appointment or whatever.
If it happens, it happens.
If it happens, it happens. But I look so forward to it that I make sure I schedule things around that.
Yeah.
Because I look so forward to that time together. That's what we're doing right now. This is his lunch break. Making a video.
Yeah.
But this video is only going to be as fun as it is right now with him in it. I could have done it by myself, but it's way better with him. And then, we consider our time when he gets off work very valuable.
Right.
And if we have something else we're wanting to take on, we count the cost of, okay, but this will be a sacrifice of our time together. Is that something that we think we should do? Or, are you prepared for that? And the thing is it makes you feel so loved. It's made me feel so loved. I'll just go ahead and put it on myself. It has, because I don't ever have to wonder where I stand with him.
Right.
I don't ever have to wonder, if he wants to spend time, because he literally, everything he does is to spend time with me. And because he's been that way, I have absolutely reciprocated that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I want that too. I've always, that's just something I always wanted. I never really understood what that was like, but, not to the extent that we have it, and not to the consistency that we have it. But, and everybody's schedules are going to vary, and maybe you don't have, the time that we have, but, we make that time. And so I was watching a video yesterday of this really, awesome person anyway, but she was just like, we make time for each other once a week. And I was like, that is not enough. If you can get by on that, go for it. But the thing is this has been so crucial in the fact of how good our relationship is, because we make time for each other. We usually get up early and spend time together in the morning. We read our Bibles and pray, and we spend that time having our coffee together, and then we do lunch, and then, he comes right home. Yeah. And we do whatever. He'll always ask me, what do you want tonight to look like? And we may have a lot of other things going on, but we do them together. Right. And that's really been something that's, I think, has probably made things really, really amazing.
Yeah. You have to learn how to be able to make that to where it's like the other person and your time together is actually a number one priority. Because if you're just prioritizing your saying and saying, how can I fit this in the middle of everything else that I'm wanting to do, you always have to you always have to ask yourself, what's the cost of me doing this? Yeah. And sometimes it's not about because it's something that she needs it or I need it. It's just because both of us need it for each other. Both of us need to be there for each other in that way. And that part of it ends up being something that we look forward to. We make it to where it's, if we don't have the time, we at least try and make the effort. And I think there's a big part of saying, even if it's something that I'm busy in my schedules, or even if it's something that I've got a lot of patience, it doesn't take long for me to just send a text of saying I love you, or I think you're sexy, or whatever it else is. It just kind of comes to mind. I made it a point of saying that I if there's anything that kind of comes to my mind in that way, I just say it in the moment. And she's like, why are you saying this in the moment? I was like, it's just because that was what I was feeling in the moment. It wasn't like this long conversation. It wasn't like we had this big part of it, but it ends up being these small little pieces that really just kind of show value throughout the day, even if we're not together.
Yeah.
And I think that showing that part of it ends up being a lifelong goal. It's not to get an end. It's not to get it's not a means to an end. It's not saying I'm going to do this so I can do these other things later, so I can get this off my schedule, so I have all this other time to do this. It's just something that I prioritize in the middle of everything else that we have going on. Yeah. There's times where we've turned down dinners that I've had with work because they wouldn't allow spouses. I just turned them down and didn't go. Not because it wasn't an opportunity to be able to mingle and be all these other places, but if it's something that both of us can't do it, then it's not good enough for either one of us. And I've had we it took her about a year and a half to kind of get the saying of it down.
Oh.
But one of the things that I always said whenever we were kind of going through our dating and the early marriages, is if it's not good for both of us, it's not good for either of us. And she would translate, if it's not good for me, it's not good for us. Or she's like, if it's not good for us, it's not good for me. Or
I just always butcher
it was
it.
really, really funny. But it's that part of saying, if there's something that only benefits one of us, is there something better that could benefit both of us instead? And it makes it to where we just kind of make it to where that's just what we do, and we try and make it to where everything that we're doing is working out in the best interest for both of us together.
You're super sweet. I love this guy. But okay, so that's our 3, possibly 4 tips to a very, very healthy, happy marriage. And so we hope this blessed you, and let us know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe. Also, we changed the name of our channel to Kingdom Lifestyle. And yeah, so we're excited about that. But anyway, we will talk to you guys soon.
See ya.
Bye.